Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger, and this is the Eddie Network Podcast. My guest today is Jay Armstrong. I met him through also a former guest, Gail Boenning. They are writers, and they have something going on about writing, which I'll let him tell you about. But Jay, I'm glad you're here. Tell us a little bit about what you do, and tell us a little bit about your podcast.
Sure, Ed. Thanks for inviting me. So I I was for 17 years a high school English teacher. And then due to a neurological illness that I have, I retired and I needed to find something else to do with my life. And so I've always had this yearning to write books. While I was teaching, I was always noodling and writing little stories, and none of them stuck. And then, as a writer, you're always, and you know this, you're always looking for material. Or when you're younger, uh, and you're a novice writer, you're chasing trends. Like right now, like I don't know, like sexy vampires are like kind of popular. Um, and so I realized that when I got sick and I had a head full of doubt and confusion, I had a lot of material. I didn't want it. For better or worse, I had this material to write. So I started writing, and I started a blog, rightonfighton.org in 2013. And really, it was about like the early ongoings of my disability. But over time, it transformed into basically weekly letters that I write to my three children. And I don't call them by name, but I write these letters to them about life, the ups and the downs. And that caught on, and it really hit a nerve with people. And that wasn't my intention. I was not trying to be, a best-selling writer. I was just trying to write letters to my kids. Because when I was diagnosed 10 years ago, and they were young. My oldest was at the time was 5. So there was a lot of things they didn't know and that I didn't know, but I wanted to know. So I started writing these letters, and over time, the letters became 2 books, both of them over my shoulders.
Yeah.
The first book I wrote was called Bedtime Stories for a Living, and that is just a collection of letters that I wrote to my kids. And the premise of the book essentially is that, and I realized this as I was writing these letters, because you might think, I'm Father of the Year, but I realized I never told my kids, never, ever, and I'm not making this up. It's not some art that fits well into the book. But I never told my kids a bedtime story. I never did. So I thought that was kind of an element of the book that I wanted to expound upon. And so that's how the book unfolds. Me talking in the first person about never telling my kids a bedtime story. And then what follows essentially is a bedtime story. But it's about real life, and it's about my trials and tribulations and my undying love for my kids. But it's not all pie in the sky at all. There are hard lessons to be learned that I hopefully did a good job explaining. Uh, Over my left shoulder is my newest book, Ordinary Hero, and that is about. Now, I've been living with this illness for 10 years. So after 10 years, it's starting to I'm starting to understand it. Early on, I didn't understand it. At this point, it's about understanding and accepting and learning to be grateful for the gifts the disease has given me, which is a weird thing to say, but it's true. The disease gave me something to work with. It kind of gave my life a sense of direction that I didn't have before I got sick. So that's what that one is about. And I should say that even though both books are about my disease that is incurable, that is progressive. I try and I do write with a sense of humor. Um, a long time ago, I was a stand-up comic. So finding the humor in all this ugliness is part of, I believe, my job. And as a writer, keeps me going. If I was writing about doom and gloom, I probably wouldn't have finished 2 books. So there's always a twinge of humor in all of this.
Wow, I had no idea. And well, that's the way these first conversations work. I meet someone and they have a story that just kind of blows me away. Um, I'm curious as to what your children thought about your illness when it began to happen. What was their response then?
Um, it happened. I mean, I was when I was diagnosed in 2013. My youngest son was 3 weeks old, so he's never known dad without being sick. And there's been, let's say, a digression in my illness over time. And my kids they witnessed it. And to be honest, they've never asked about the disease, but they know dad is sick and dad needs help. And they know that. And so as a parent, it's kind of good because, for example, last night, I said to my middle son, do me a favor and take out the trash. And he did. So he does, whenever I ask him to do something physically, there isn't a stomping or stammering of these chores. They know dad is sick. If dad could do it on his own, he would, but he can't. So in their minds, what I see is they know dad is sick and is trying his best. And so they've always been very accepting and honestly very caring about it without asking too many questions.
But so what I hear you saying is that the disease is ever present, but it's not the center of your life or the family's life.
No, it's not, but it is always there. Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's going to make a huge difference in your children's lives, you know.
Yeah, I think so. It's a matter of waiting for them to, fully understand.
It is a gift. It is a gift.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say that to you because you suffer from this, but it becomes the thing which unites your family together, um, where they understand really what the purpose of family is.
Right. Sure.
That's what I've seen with other people that I know, where one of the parents has some situation that occurs that causes the family trauma. I mean, when I was 11, my mother had a water skiing accident, and she was never the same after that. And so my
Mhm.
dad carried the weight of the family, and I was 11. I was 12. I think it was no, I was 11. But really, I was moving into adolescence, and so I was really on my own. And my dad took care of my sisters, and but I know what it's like to live in a house where one of the parents is not fully well, and hers was her accident caused her to have pain, and the pain was progressive. It became more, and this is the 1960s when there was not much remedy for pain other than you know heavy narcotics. So we watched her deteriorate, and that had an effect upon us. But we're very tight as a family now, and have been for a long time because of that. So I I I I understand what your kids are going through, because I was a kid going through something similar, and um, I congratulate them on being their father's best friends in many respects. That's what I'd imagine that we could see there if we were there, sitting in your living room watching your kids, and you do whatever the things you do.
Yeah, they are very patient with me. They know, they see me try and struggle. And I think that the lesson they're learning, I don't think will come into fruition until maybe 10 years,
Mhm.
15 years down the road. But I know they're learning. And that's, I take solace in that.
So have they read or have you read the bedtime stories to them?
So, so they have not read my books.
I
The
understand that.
and that was, and it's funny because in school they have to like independently read a book, and they always ask me, Dad, what book should I read? And I'm like, well, your father wrote two books, and you should probably read them. And they're like, yeah, but they're so long. So they have no interest in reading my books right now. And that's
Well,
totally fine. But
it,
it is funny.
if your kids are like my kids, and my kids are older, but they feel like they already know all the stuff that's in the books because I talk
Yeah.
about it all the time.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny?
There is one chapter in Bedtime that my kids have read, and they keep reading it, and they ask me about it. And, and it's when my middle son learned the F word. And it's all about him learning the F word and asking me if I knew what it meant. So they love that chapter. That's probably the
That's
only
priceless.
chapter all three of them have read.
That's priceless. That's
Yeah.
great. Well, you and our mutual friend Gail Benning have started a podcast,
Yes.
and so tell us about what you, what you're doing with that, and
Sure.
it's a little bit more than, I mean, it's not like what I'm doing here. It's very different. I've been on your podcast.
Yes.
I'm honored to be the first one on the, they were test driving it with me. getting all
Yes.
the kinks out of the system. No, you do a lot of different things with this. So kind of give us an idea what y'all are doing and all the ways that you have kind of expanded on the form of podcasting.
Sure. So the the podcast is called One Line, One Love. And it's a pod blog. So it's not like a long form podcast. It's a short conversation with a writer about writing that we embed into a blog, essentially. So it's a combination of like audio and visual. And this came about with, now, Gail and I met a few years ago, believe it or not, on the internet. So not everyone on the internet is like a creep. So Gail and I met and we started years of dialogue about writing. So she obviously has her books, I have mine. And since I retired from teaching, the one thing I've always missed and still miss is talking to writers about writing. Because in my life, I know no other writer. All the writers I know, I talk to via the internet or Zoom. So having these conversations about writing for me and for Gail, not putting words in her mouth, but are inspiring because writing is a solitary act. I mean, it's not glorious at all. You know this. In my two books, I wrote in solitude. I mean, yes, I was surrounded by family, and they're an integral part of the books. But you do the writing alone. Yeah, you might have music to accompany, but in the end, you are the one. And so there is all this stuff in your head, and your heart, and your gut that you need to get out as a writer. And it can be anything from themes to like nuances of writing, like the ins and outs, the grunt work of writing that, to be honest with you, only writers can understand.
Mhm.
So, down on like create this Podblog, and essentially, the one thing that we, the one question that we fielded a lot was her and I both. How do you find time to write? So time is kind of like the central theme of all this, and that's why it's a Podblog. It's short. It's one line, one love. The idea is that the writer comes on and shares one line from their book, and then is hit with a series of questions that usually center around the word one. So, for example, like, what is one food that every writer should have in their pantry? Or what is one technique that every writer needs to work on? What is one time management technique that you can share with listeners? So we try to create a short, condensed, but impactful narrative that is over and about 15 minutes. So the idea again is give the writers inspiration and then let them go and write. And that is the driving force behind this. We want our listeners to stop listening and write. So through the dialogue, we're trying to tease out inspirational ideas that can help writers write. Because Gail and I call us everyday writers, and we're everyday writers. Most of my writing is not good at all. It's not. However, I've written 2 books. How did I do that? And by the way, they're pretty good. How did I do that? Work. You have to write bad first drafts of everything, and then
Yeah.
it's the work, just day after day going at it, and then you build it's kind of like going to the gym. Like after a few weeks of going to the gym, you start building muscle. And same thing as writing. After a few weeks, few months, few years, you build that writing muscle that even when you're having a bad day and the words are not coming out right, you have that muscle to fall back and rely on. And that will get you from bad days to good days. So we created this podcast, Podblog, essentially to inspire authors to write, but also to feed our hunger to learn about the writing process and become better writers ourselves.
Do you have a particular time of day when you write?
Um, so, so, uh, I have days, not time, but days. So Monday is always my day of self-doubt, of self-loathing. Even though I'm happy, there is always a moment on Monday where I'm like, I will never, ever write again. And
Well,
then,
this is
yeah,
Monday. This is
it
Monday.
is. It is.
And have you felt that way today?
Yes. Mhm. Yes.
How
But
do you get out of that? How do you get out of that mindset?
um self-talk. I tell myself to stop. No, and then what I what I do, all my writing starts as a list. There's no very rarely are there coherent sentences. So Monday morning, always self-doubt, self-loathing. But by Monday night, I start gathering a list of ideas. It's very random. And then Tuesday, I start bringing that list together and building off of 1 or 2 of the ideas that I find in that list. And then Wednesday, for me, it's all systems go. Wednesday has always been a heavy writing day for me. I don't know why, but I usually write on Wednesday. I write from about 8 in the morning to about 4 in the afternoon. Now, it's not consistent. There are times where I take a walk or I work out or obviously get some eat, but I'm always writing during Wednesday. And then Thursday is my day to revise and bring it all together. But once I get writing, it comes pretty easy for the most part. It's like once I get that ball rolling downhill, it's it's going fast. So picking up speed and momentum, and that is what I think writers need. So to go back to the Podblog for a second, it's about building momentum. In fact, at the end of our uh, blog, we have a space for writers to share some writing, and we always give weekly prompts. So we have weekly prompts, hopefully that can inspire writing. They can put that writing in the space below, and then we, as a community, comment on those writing. So it's about building momentum. But by the time I get to Wednesday, Thursday, it's all about momentum, and Friday I usually celebrate. And then Saturday I breathe. Sunday the doubt begins to creep in, but I keep it away. Mm-hmm. And then Monday we start the process all over again.
Yeah, I get that, and it is a process. It's a discipline. It's a regiment. It's and it has to be something that makes sense for you. And for me, I tend to write early mornings, middle of the night, very little afternoons, late mornings. This is when I do the podcasting. Is then. Right. I was up in the middle of the night writing last night, and I'm a little weary this morning because I was, well, just because of writing in the middle of the night. But yeah, I get that. I'm curious. So you have your two books up there, and before we went on, I asked you about the mug on your shelf there, and you were about to tell me about the significance of that mug. Because I think this is, if I'm right on what I think it is, I think it's a valuable story for our watchers and listeners to hear.
Yeah, so that mug, it says mancation, and then in Roman numerals, the number 25. And what that means is I've been going on the same vacation or mancation with the same guys for 25 years.
Yeah. And you go to different places?
We have, but really, our home base is in the Poconos of Pennsylvania.
Uh-huh.
And one of my friends has a house. His family has a house. So we've been going there for 25 years. There have been a few road trips, but in the end, seeing 10 guys for 25 years, pretty much in the same spot.
Did you all grow up together?
Yeah, so a few of them I've known since I was 6 years old. We started grade school together, and then high school, and then went to different colleges, but obviously stayed close and have been close ever since. Some of the other guys are from high school, but we've known each other for a really long time.
And what would you say has been the most significant change you've seen in the group as a whole?
Well, some of these guys I only see now once a year, because my good friend lives in Boston. I know one who lives like an hour west in Pennsylvania. A few who live close by, and we do see each other, between our trip. But you asked me what has changed, and I'm going to tell you nothing. I mean, yes, we have families and we're older, and maybe we're a little bit heavier and flabbier at times, but really nothing has changed. I mean, we're making the same jokes. same inside jokes that we made 25 years ago. We're listening to the same music and that we did in high school. So I don't expect everyone to understand it. But that's okay because everyone has their inside jokes,
Yeah.
their inside lives. But nothing really has changed, and that is the beauty of this, because in life everything changes. It does. You can't stop change. You can't stop progression. So I mean, uh there were so when I started showing symptoms of my illness, and we go to a mountain resort, so it's very uneven, a lot inclines and declines, and I do not do them very well. So I usually walk with a cane. On occasion, I'll use a walker. So I knew that the location and with the incline, the declines, I knew I had to use my walker. Um, and I was a bit apprehensive because, people see a walker and, there's judgment. I know that. And my friends who've known me my whole life, who've known me before the illness, knew me. I played high school baseball, I played high school soccer. So they knew me as an athlete. And I was wary of them seeing me like this. And you know what? They didn't phase them at all. It's just part of life. Um, and that was really comforting to me, that they were just like, no big deal. Like, yeah, problem. So what? We'll deal with it. So, yes, things have changed, but some things haven't. And that is a beautiful thing.
That's I'm happy for you, but because that stability of friendship, particularly when you've suffered a debilitating illness, really allows you to have a stability throughout your life that many people who lack that would not have.
Yeah.
And I'm happy for you for that.
Thank you.
I know that's it's very important. So here's my last question for you. And so you've been through this. You're going through this illness, and you've written a couple of books. You worked before that. You've got some kids, got a family. And how old are you?
43.
We are 43 years old. So you're at that kind of mid stage in life. Where do you find hope for the future?
Uh, in my kids. I mean, I don't know what will happen in a few years with me and with this illness. I mean, I also so I live in Philadelphia, and before a few years ago, we didn't have a support group for our illness. There were people in this area, but uh it's a very lonely illness. It's essentially a kind of a cross between Parkinson's and ALS. And so I knew that I needed to reach out and find people. I need people. We can't suffer alone. We can't live alone. In fact, I think it was John Donne who said, "No man is an island," and it's very true. I mean, you can't do this alone. So I reached out and I started a support group in my area, and we meet every month to talk about our illness, and that has brought me this hope that the more people I can reach, whether it's in my meeting or buy my books or buy the Podblog or buy my own blog, the more people I can connect with, the more hope I have. So, and my hope is that when I can't do this anymore, all these stories will go on.
That's great. Um, I think you've got. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you've got a lot to get. You've got a lot of this together. You've done some great things there, and I really wish you well. And I look forward to seeing further books coming out of you, because I think you've got wisdom, hard won wisdom.
Yeah.
And it may be that 10 years from now that you and your sons get together and write a book together about families where one of the parents is suffering from an illness. That would be I would it would be really interesting to interview your sons about this, but to do that would also draw attention to it in a way that probably is not beneficial to your family. But it
Right.
would be interesting to hear what they have to say, because my conversation with children, I talk to children all the time, and I talk with everyone all the time. So but I'm always trying to talk with them as if they're an adult, if they're on my level, and oftentimes they say things that they really are, and they could be 6 or 7 years old. I mean, it's amazing, and so I'm curious. I think maybe what I'm saying is that somehow to chronicle your children's understanding of how to take care of a parent who's suffering from an illness like this is worth doing, and it will give them, maybe they may become a writer. And I have a son who's a writer.
Right.
He was writing. I mean, he's 38, and he was writing before I was writing. He was
Mhm.
writing as a 12-year-old.
Right. Right.
So
Well,
yeah, that's my,
I mentioned to my kids about they're developing skills and trying to be a writer, and they just roll their eyes at me. They don't right now. They don't see excited to
right.
write, and that's totally fine.
That's
I mean,
that's
you
fine.
have to let kids do their own thing.
When I published Circle of Impact, which is right there, um, I spent a year doing book events, and every book event there would be someone who'd come up and says, "I'd really like to write a book," and I would say, don't write a
Mm,
book, just
Right.
write, just write.
Right.
And if there's a book in you, it will show up. But just
Yes.
write for yourself. Don't write for anybody else. Just write for yourself, and you will discover things about yourself that you are so glad to know. And but you also discover things that you say, well, I really need to change that. So
Yeah.
it's such an important way to articulate kind of the paths we're on. And so I encourage people to write, but don't try to write for publication. Don't try to write a book. Don't try to do that. Just write. Carry a little notebook around. My notebook is usually right here, but it's over there. Because even if you got 2 minutes and you're waiting in the doctor's office, you know,
Mm,
write your thought down. Write that impression of that child over there sitting in the chair on the other side of the office. Write your impression of how the doctor spoke to you, or the kindness of that receptionist at the desk in the doctor's office. You know, when you capture these kinds of things, they stay with us. When you put them on in words, they stay with us and become valuable later in life.
Yeah, you know, when I was younger, and I thought about writers, you know, I always imagined like a writer sitting behind an oak desk and having a cup of tea and maybe a cat nearby. But that is not writing at all, and I've learned that. So I went through my weekly routine with you, but I'm always taking notes, and there's never a moment where I'm like sitting at the oak desk. I'm always writing on the run, you know.
Yeah.
So it's not sexy or glamorous. It's just, you know, it's a way of life.
Yes. Totally agree. Well, Jay, it's been great to have you on the show, and I can understand how you and Gail are a good match for each other. I mean, she's been through an illness and that she's written about, and
Mhm.
you've got an illness that you've written about, and I think that is a really good position for two people to say, let's do a blog, or as you call it, a blog. What was it?
Podblog.
Yeah, Podblog. Do a Podblog together, and we'll put the all the particulars on the Podblog and on your books and whatever else you would like in the show notes, so that people that are interested in what you have to say and what you've written can find you. And I wish you well as you continue this journey that you're on. And thank you for being.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It was awesome to talk to you.
I feel the same way talking to you. So, and thank you all for watching. Uh, think about your own lives in light of whatever it is that you're experiencing, whether it's difficult or whether it's wonderful. Reflect upon it so that you have a way of understanding it and articulating why it matters in whatever way it does. Because when we're able to articulate to other people, then we have found a little bit of ourselves as something that's substantial that we then offer to people as a way to connect with them. And I think that's one of the beauties of writing. So I encourage you to write, and maybe the place to start is to write a comment here on the blog. I mean on the podcast. So we'd love to hear from you, and we'll see you next time here on the Eddie Network podcast. Bye bye. Okay.